Hello, it's Candy. Let's talk about how you put together your Bible studies, how you prepare, what do you do, what do you look for, all that kind of stuff. So, if you've ever wondered what a good Bible study consists of, what you should do, like the logistics or whatever, I'm here to tell you I do not have the perfect setup whatsoever. But I would like to share some ideas that I have, and I would really like to start by saying, I don't think there is. I see so many people's videos with all their little step-by-steps, and this is what the perfect one is supposed to look like, and mine just don't never look like that. I'm sorry. It just don't. I'm glad all y'all's got the perfect setup, okay? Really, I am. Because I learned from some of y'all. Glad. More power to you. Because some of y'all be feeding me with y'all's Bible studies. So don't take this the wrong way, but my life is like a whirlwind this year. I'm like, phew, what in the world? Every time I think I'm going to have this or that time or go here or get to do or whatever, and it just ain't, okay? My Bible studies here lately have been like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know, you're shooting in the dark sometimes, but this is what I like to do when I can, okay? I like to go where I feel the pulling or the drawing to, like whatever book that is in the Bible. And I like to stick here lately over the last year or so, I like to stick to a whole book and start to finish in that book. And it don't always, my Bible reading and all, I don't go by the plans that people have, all this plans or whatever, because that falls flat for me. I'm sorry, it just does. I hate to say that. I've never been able to stick with that because it just eats up my time that I would rather be in an area that I feel drawn to or pulled to, rather than just checking this box to fill in this space to be able to say, yep, I did it. I did the things I was supposed to do. I don't like that. It doesn't do anything for me. So all those Bible reading plans and all, I'm all for them for people who needs that, or that's what they have to have to motivate them to stay in the Word or whatever. But I like to follow what I feel drawn to, what goes with the flow of my studies. And my studies have lately been in whole books. Used to, my studies were all about subject matter. And I'm just throwing these subjects out there. Just say the subject of love, or the subject of marriage, or the subject of money, or the subject of whatever the subject is that you enjoy. and you can pull all the topics and the scriptures from Genesis to Revelation on that and put together. And those are beautiful studies. I still do some of those studies, like a study on the fruit of the Spirit, or a study on like the Beatitudes, whatever, those things are so good, and I still do those occasionally. I do not, for the most part, do a lot of topical studies so much so anymore, unless it is involving something around like a theme or a word study, something that you can dig deeper into. I'm just drawn to digging deeper lately, and so going through the Bible in a year is not going to work for me, because I hang around in a certain area for longer than just reading it. You just reading just to be reading, okay? That falls flat for me. It don't do anything for me, and I'm sorry that might bug some people, but like, you could do that, and 5 minutes later couldn't even tell you what I was reading or where I was at or anything. Nothing stuck. So I need something more than just check I did that, okay? No, I gotta have something more. So what I like to do is I love to draw from others who have already put these studies together for whole books. And I like to get like the culture of that day that kind of mindset in my head so that I can read this as they would have read it. Not that I can do it in deeper depth like that, because obviously I wasn't there, but to kind of have that mindset, to get into the place where, like, what were the sights and the sounds and the happenings in that culture, in that day and in that age. What did things look like? What were their I don't know, what were their military, if it's like a Joshua thing, what did their military what did all that, the logistics of that look like? What if it was in something in the New Testament, then what was the days, what was going on in that day? Who was the superpower there, and that kind of thing. And then historical, like, facts as far as like where it's at on the timeline, because those kinds of things, which would make other people say boring, falls flat for me, well, that makes it come more alive for me, because I've never really done that except for over the last 6, 7, 8 years. Along and along, I'm getting a little better at like the timeline of how things unfolded and we're supposed to unpack it in that sense, so that we know like the overarching story, instead of just looking at, okay, what was David doing today? Or look at Mary and Martha, what in the world's going on there? And that kind of thing. Because ultimately the Bible is not really about the persons that you're reading about, like Lazarus. They're a part of the story, but they're not the main character. The main character is the Lord. Okay, what's the Lord doing in that character's life? And they're more than just stories. It's not like it's made up stuff. These are real people, okay? They really had a life on earth during that time, and they really were, like, David really was a king, okay? He really was a shepherd, and he really became king, and blah, 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 okay? So these things really did happen. They were real people. You can also read about a lot of things that are in the Bible. A lot of them are outside of the Bible, in historical books, in other literature. So it's not like the Bible is some made up figment, imaginary story. No, this is God's story, okay? It's all about God and what he's doing with everything that belongs to him, because he's the creator of it all. He's the overseer of it all. And there is no one equal to him, and nobody has ever come close. So it's all about what God is doing in the people's lives, and we can learn from them. But I like to get context. I love to do that these days and stick with a book from start to finish. I love that because I never really have had that kind of a study. I've done that reading, read through, but not like pause or stop or reflect or look up or discover or dig deep. I've never done that until like the last 8 or 10 years, somewhere around in there, and it's just gotten better and better. And now that is like some of the things that I like to do. And I started out taking notes whenever I started my studies a while back. Like, note taking for me went through so many different ups and downs and ins and outs and overs and unders. Some days it might look like literally just scrap pieces of paper, just answering questions or writing down questions or making comments, and then digging out those subjects within that book. Or like it may be going through there and looking for the repetitive paralleled themes that are seen through there, or studying what someone else is teaching about that book. And of course you're going to read it, okay? You got to read the text itself, but you got to go beyond that to do a real good study. And to do a real good study, you need to know like the culture, the background, the themes, and that kind of thing. What kind of literature it is. That matters too, because that tells you how you're supposed to read that kind of literature. Like historical things, it's like literally like opening up a history book or a newspaper and reading the news or the history or what has happened. And you will see in that kind of book, whatever is historical, you're going to see a lot of facts. That it's just facts. This is the truth that happened. This is what's literally what happened. And then you have things that are full of like allegory and things that not necessarily are literal, but they do point to something literal. So you may see like things in a different sense whenever you're reading something like prophecy, especially whenever it is tied to apocalyptic literature. Whenever you see things described as something that looked like something in a horror movie, but it's representing something else. So apocalyptic literature in that day and age, those people in the ancient Near East knew very well all about what apocalyptic literature was, because it was a very real thing and it played a real role in their culture in that day. It's much like today, if you went to, what is that place where you would go and you would go to the theater where they're acting it out on stage and they're all dressed in costumes and maybe they're dressed up like animals or something and they're playing characters. That kind of a thing, in a sense, okay? That's what apocalyptic literature was to them in that sense. But it's not just a made-up fairy tale. It's literally real stuff. And you have to know what they would have thought of in their original language, and like if it's Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic, what is that saying in their original language? So I love to do word studies. I love that kind of thing. It really makes the text come alive whenever you figure out, okay, if Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are writing to a certain audience, then what was the reason for that writing? And most of the time, the text will tell you that this is why I'm writing this to you. And like John's writings tells you, I'm writing that you can know and believe, okay? That's the purpose, so that you can know and you can believe that this is true. And their audience, like who they were writing to, will tell you why you think that this one's telling the same story, just sounds a little bit different. Something in there is a little different than like Matthew and Luke. They're not exactly lining up with one another in a certain sense, but it's not that it's not lining up in a certain sense. It's that they're telling the true story to a certain people that would need to hear what they needed to hear it say, so that it would inform their mind that yes, Jesus is the one, okay? And that is, you can trust him. Mark is very adamant and urgent in his things are like urgent and immediate and suddenlies, and this is because they were, Mark's writing of the Gospels were earlier on, and it was after the cross, and so a lot of their lives were threatened by death because of them being Jesus followers. And so he was encouraging them, don't give up, don't go back, don't fall for that. The Pharisees, don't play it safe over there just because you think your life is no, you got to keep going, keep trusting Jesus. He's coming again, and while they're waiting for Jesus, who has went up to the clouds, and the angels and all, he's coming back, okay? And everything's looking like everybody around us is dying, and we've got to get all this written down. And so Mark was writing with urgency, and that's why his story seems so urgent, and that's why those details are the way they're put in there for that audience who is feeling the crunch and the face of death, and they need something to help them say, yes, we're going to go on with Jesus, okay? Even if it looks like, because all of them, all the people in after the cross that were following Jesus, they were all being threatened with death for being believers in Jesus Christ. Their lives was in jeopardy just to be a Christ follower. And so, that kind of thing tells you how to read that text. And a problem we have today is we read it like it was just written 5 years ago in the good old US of A, in the day and age that we live. And that's not the way it was written. And so we're not going to get everything out of it that we should or could get, because we're reading it with USA glasses, year 2026, instead of ancient Near East glasses 3,000-4,000 years ago. It's different whenever you have the culture and the proper perspective in your reading of it and studying it. It makes it you're staying more true to the Bible, more true to the story, more true to what you believe is truth. Then let's be more true to it. And that's my view. Okay? Doesn't always look like that, but that's what I go for. That's what I am drawn to more these days. And sometimes here lately, especially this year, it's been a struggle. Lord have mercy. Hell will fight you tooth and toenail to keep you out of God's word, with all sorts of things and all sorts of reasons and all sorts of happenings and all sorts of schedules and all different shapes, shades, colors, sizes, and kinds from every direction, okay? Believe me, the enemy does not want you to get closer to God in his word, through his word. He don't want you to learn what truth is. He doesn't want you to find out what is real. He doesn't want you to believe. He doesn't care if you read it. He doesn't care. He don't want it to change you, okay? And whenever you find out the truth and the truth gets in here, it's going to change you. And so that's the way that I perceive and believe and am drawn to in Bible studies these days. And so I know that's quirky and kooky and sounds weird to some folks, especially in the day and age and hour in which we live in, and everybody wants everything the way they want it, and they want their truth. They don't really care what the truth is. But we're too close to